Hello. Hello everyone and welcome to this new edition of Men at Arms. This is Remleiz from 40k Theories.
And this is Fiaura, and they're probably all now wondering why you asked about Battleoo.
Yes. But at any rate, today we're going to be looking at the Orks. Those lovable, cuddly little Xenos who like to have a whole bunch of patchwork equipment, which makes things very, very awkward. So we're going to start things from...
I have to clarify this edition, guys. As hard as I possibly tried, none of the Ork stuff cooperates with math. So I'm going to clarify this episode with that before we start.
Because unfortunately, Ork equipment does not have a set template like Imperial or Eldar equipment. It's not manufactured to a set standard. Everything is pretty much custom made, which makes things very, very awkward when it comes to detailing the fine points of this. But we're going to do the best we can. So we're going to start things off by looking at Ork heavy armor, which is made from sections of armored plates and scavenged pieces of armor battened into shape to fit the wearer, sort of. It usually includes huge metal pauldrons and other metal plates bolted together or even riveted into the Ork's flesh.
Ah! Okay, so for a start, the sheer idea of riveting something into someone's flesh is a terrible, terrible, awful idea.
Please bear in mind, these are also Orks who tend to be, much physically more resilient than most other species.
Are Orks immune to all disease?
Well, they can survive decapitation.
Interesting. I'll have to remember that. So, for a start, riveting something directly into someone's flesh is going to cause infection, and is going to be a wound that never actually fully closes, so the person is going to be continuously in large amounts of pain! Unlike a bullet, which is small and your body can heal around, things the size of rivets, especially multiple rivets into the same section of flesh, is pretty much never going to go away. Especially if it strikes a bone. Furthermore, the quartermaster informed me that there is a reason why we don't rivet steel plates to soldiers. It drastically inhibits their movement. I don't know how the Orks think this works, or how this works in the Orks' mind, but in my mind I look at it and I go, oh my god, this is everything wrong with biology. This shouldn't work. Why does it work? Explain! And the Orks look at me and go, because it works. And I go, okay.
Because of our magic mushroom powers.
The extra protection this provides is not actually worth it, considering that the plates are virtually irreplaceable, meaning that if a plate is damaged, you're pretty much stuck with the damaged plate. Furthermore, the plates are actually going to amplify the impact on your flesh. They will stop penetration, sure, but anything that would move the plate, were it not actually held in place by something, is actually going to cause the plate to be driven into you harder. Meaning that while you don't actually suffer any real internal damage, you are going to get a sudden spike in pain every single time you take a hit.
I suppose it's a good thing with Ork biology that they tend to feel very little in the way of pain.
That's probably a good thing.
After all, no one's ever really accused an Ork of being a scholar. It's mostly brawn, not much brain.
I can totally imagine an Ork walking up with glasses and a pile of college textbooks and going, I am a PhD in Orkism. And we're like, what the hell's Orkism? Just wouldn't want to lose an argument to him, because I'm pretty sure that losing an argument involves getting smashed onto the desk.
Yeah. Considering that if an Ork headbutts you, it can actually crack a human skull. With his own skull.
So an Ork headbutt emits 2,300 newtons of force? Ow.
Yeah.
Ow. Ow. I may drastically underestimate the amount of armor these Orks are slapping onto themselves.
So speaking of armour, the next major piece of armour in the Ork Armory is Ork Mega Armour, which is the Orkish equivalent of Imperial Tactical Dreadnought armour, also known as Terminator armour. Basically a whole bunch of piston-powered limbs to give the user phenomenal strength and incorporate fearsome weapons such as combi weapons, twin-link shooters, or power claws, which we'll get to later. And these things tend to weigh upwards of a ton, officially. And they're very complex and difficult to move and slow down the user considerably. But they can be attached with mega boosters, which help speed up and increase the power of the suit itself.
So remember how in the Inquisition episode we talked about how power armor that's not properly integrated to someone would snap bone, muscle, sinew, and other things because it would literally move so fast that their body couldn't compensate? Yeah, that's this. Having a piston strapped to your arm in order to make your arm go faster is a terrible idea for a lot of reasons. Think of it this way. I'm going to strap myself to a crankshaft of a car while it's running and just see what happens to my arm. By the time we turn the car off, my arm is probably a twisted mass of what's left of my arm. In this case, there's a reason why the Orks never get out of the Mega Armor, because I'm pretty sure that everything underneath the Mega Armor has been crushed to pulp. And they just don't care.
No.
The piston probably, considering the size of it and the sheer amount of hydraulic force that could be emitted by such a thing, has somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,000 newtons of sheer hydraulic pressure that can be exhausted into a punch. That is easily enough to crack any bone in the human body, possibly even straight up put dents in tanks. Much less an orc body, which probably can't withstand the force either. I really begin to wonder if at a certain point the knobs inside of these things are literally just a head, and the rest of his body has been completely pulverized into meat paste.
On a side note, I never understood why Games Workshop decided to call them knobs. Because considering that knob is a English slang term for someone's penis.
I think we now understand why the orcs don't have penises. They actually do have penises. They're just giant peni.
Or if they're just a head, they're literal dickheads.
Hmm.
Anyway.
Big shooter?
Yes, the big shooter. Big shooters are, I suppose the best way to describe it is the orc equivalent of a heavy bolter, being a large, heavy caliber machine gun that bucks and sparks like crazy when the trigger is pulled. These things are usually bolted onto vehicles, but sometimes make it into the hands of regular orc boys. And they're fed from chunky magazines of ammo by crank handles, motors, or some other mechanism, and are often customized to have multiple barrels, crosshair sights, longer ammo belts, etc.
I like the term customized in quotation marks.
Yes.
Orc equipment has absolutely no standardization. This means that a big shooter can range in caliber from as little as a 30 cal to as high as a 95 cal. In effect, it all depends upon who is expected to operate the shooter, whether it be a grot or a full-blown orc war boss. I have found that their mechanisms are incredibly crude, but still efficient enough to be useful. Although I do admit that some of them are silly enough to go back to the old post-Civil War style Gatling gun with a crank handle and a gravity-fed multi-barrel weapon that basically fires as fast as you can turn the crank. To say this lightly, this is what you would expect to see from like an African warlord who's run out of money to buy weapons. Not to be racist, but that's what I would expect to see if he's run out of money to buy weapons. And I'm just like, this is insane. In addition to this, the Ork supply lines must be absolutely obscene in order to supply all the different types of ammo, or it's just made Orky and the same bullet works for everything.
It's funny you should mention that, because moving on to the smaller version of it, the standard shooter, shooters can actually fire either massive bullets or explosive shells or a mixture of both. So it seems like shooters, and potentially big shooters as well, can actually fire different types of ammunition from the same clip or magazine or ammo belt, whatever. Basically, as long as the bullet fits in the barrel, it will fire it, essentially.
Why do you Orks insist on breaking my brain?
Because they believe it will work, and therefore it will work, because that's the Ork ability of their Gestalt psychic power. They believe something strong enough, it will work. That's why yellow missiles will make the biggest explosion and red ones go faster.
Is this why the Lehman Russ tank still runs even though the engine's been completely destroyed, so they just draw a picture on the wall that says vroom vroom?
Exactly the reason, yes. They believe it would work, it would work. Powered by love.
The Ork shooter is literally probably the most efficient weapon I've ever seen. It fires whatever ammo you want to throw into it. It doesn't matter caliber or type, and it doesn't care. It never overheats. It never actually can run out of ammunition in a lot of cases, because the only time the Ork seems to have to reload is when the Ork thinks I should reload. And it can be customized to hold virtually anything else you want to add on to it. I have seen shooters with rocket launchers, grenade launchers, underslung shotguns, and for spite purposes a flamethrower all attached that somehow works with a single trigger and fires exactly what you want it to fire with just the one trigger.
Honestly, I'd never thought I'd hear the phrase Orks and efficient in the same sentence.
The gun literally just seems to be the universal I will shoot no matter what. To tell an old Vietnam story, a guy brought home a AK-47 and put it in a storage locker. 10 years later, the AK-47 had rusted completely shut. He pulled it out, kicked it open, threw in some ammunition, and it fired without a problem. That is an Ork shooter pre-Ork design. Now we've gotten into, holy crap, this is just crazy. They also require apparently literally no maintenance. Unless the Ork decides he wants to give it maintenance, at which point it suddenly works better. I don't understand. There's no way I can math this. There's no way I can describe this in physics or in any shape or form other than Ork. Now, the Power Claw, however, I could do a little physics on.
Yes. The Power Claw is the Ork equivalent of the Imperial Power Fist, being an armoured-powered gauntlet strapped to an Ork's arm, with a piston-driven pincer comprised of 2 or 3 snapping blades, which are sheathed in energy in the same way a Power Fist is, and can rip through any armour by tearing it and tearing any means apart into bloody paste. It's also pretty effective against the vehicles. Now, many war bosses and noms actually decide to lop off their own arms and replace it with a Power Claw, basically using it as an augmented implant.
Okay, so I know that it requires a crane that can lift 28 tons to attach an M1 Abram turret to the chassis. For a Power Claw to be able to grip onto a piece of tank armor and literally just rip it, or in some cases, throw the turret clean off, means that it has to have the capability to expunge at least 28 tons of force. To be able to throw around 28 tons of force is quite literally the equivalent of looking at someone, punching them, and they burst into a bloody pulp against the wall.
I cast fist indeed.
Even... I've started doing math for the new Doom game to figure out exactly how strong Doom Guy is, and even Doom Guy would look up and have a tear in his eye and go, holy shit, I wish I had that. This thing is capable of ripping guns off of vehicles, the entire firing mechanism along with it, and then shoving said firing mechanism into the Ork's hand so he can fire it. That's crazy stupid. You're gonna have to incorporate this into Mega Armor simply because you need something else to carry it. If it is capable of lifting at least 28 tons and throwing it across the battlefield, then this thing must exert probably closer to the neighborhood of 40 tons of force to be able to wield 28 tons as a melee weapon. The power claw simply would need another set of armor just so it wouldn't tear your own arm apart.
But in fairness, it probably could be used by a very large Ork warbot, because as we know, the more powerful an Ork is, the larger he grows and the higher up in hierarchy in Ork society he gets. And there has been cases with Orks such as the Beast from the Beast Arises series, who were so large they were using a tank turret as a club.
That's what I'm talking about, is being able to rip a tank turret off and swing it like a club.
But that's without the power claw. He just used that as a normal club, the Beast. With bare hands. That's how powerful this one was. So a large Ork warboss could theoretically have no problem using a power claw strapped to his arm or even replacing his arm.
I'm officially amazed you can even kill Orks now.
In fairness, the Beast was like the largest Orks in like over 10,000 years.
Okay, fair enough.
The closest one since was Ghazghkull, who's nowhere near as big. But still pretty big.
The fact of the matter is, the Power Claw exerts more force than most industrial-sized factory cranes can possibly ever muster, and does so at the flick of a wrist, so to speak, which is why I'm pretty sure they have to replace their entire arm and attach it to Mega Armor in order for the Power Claw to not kill the person wielding it. That's what I got to say on the Power Claw! Why would you need to hit something that hard?
Again, because this is Warhammer 40,000. There are things out there such as big demons, giant killer insect monster things the size of titans. You're probably going to want to punch them pretty hard.
Fair enough.
So next up, we've got the Ork Slugger, which is the standard Ork sidearm, a huge, high-caliber, semi-automatic pistol. And these things are actually very heavy. It actually says they're used as a deadly close combat weapon due to its incredible weight. So it's basically a huge slab of iron that can just so happen to spit out bullets. They have very limited accuracy, but have huge stopping power as well, thanks to the massive shot they fire, and dangerously large powder charges that propel the ammunition. Although jams and misfires are incredibly common.
So for those who are curious, this is the equivalent of using a semi-automatic musket as your primary weapon. Muskets are heavy, by the way. Muskets are very heavy. And this is no different. It is literally like taking a musket, making it the size of a pistol, and then attaching a big heavy rock to the bottom to hit people with. It has no real rhyme or reason other than it makes a big boom sound when it fires, which apparently is something Orks like, is the bigger the boom it makes, the happier it makes them.
Mordaka.
To wield such a firearm, such a sidearm if you will, at such a very high caliber as say a 95 caliber musket round, literally would require quite a bit of strength if you're going to put as much charge into it as you would a normal musket. See, something not known to most people is that muskets and pistols were actually drastically different in terms of what amount of gunpowder you were supposed to pour down the barrel before you fired. Pistols would generally not be made to have the same amount of gunpowder in them, even if they're the same caliber weapon. Well, the Orks decided, fuck it, we're going to do it our way. With no shoulder brace or anything, the Ork's strength would literally have to be roughly 1.5 to 1.7 times that of the average human.
Which it generally is.
And on top of this, the accuracy of this weapon is incredibly questionable. You say very limited accuracy. I say I'm lucky if the recoil doesn't cause me to become an AA gun. As far as deadly close combat weapon, yeah, sure, absolutely. You know why? Because when you hit someone with a musket, it fucking hurts. When you hit someone with a musket that's been compressed to something the size of your fist, it hurts even more.
Not to mention the fact as well that even with real-world guns like the 6-shooter, if you pistol whip someone with that, you can crack their skull open and kill them that way. So imagine something a lot bigger hitting you around the side of the head.
Exactly, and more than likely with either a knife or a weighted end put on it. Dear Orks, can you ever make sense?
Well, that's not the weirdest thing we're going to be looking at. We've got to look at something a bit more bizarre, to say the least. The tank hammer. It's literally a rocket attached to a stick, which they use to smack things with.
This is literally the equivalent of a grease bomb. For those who don't know what a grease bomb is, it involves taking a bunch of plastic explosive, shoving it into your sock, covering it in sticky motor oil-like grease, running up to an enemy tank and slapping it on the side of the tank before it detonates. That's what the Orks have done, except for they put theirs on the end of a stick.
And I don't think they're going to have much time to get away before it goes boom, though, however.
No, they're not going to have any time to get away before it goes boom. It probably doesn't even have, like... these don't even have fuses to them. They are literally percussion capped. So as soon as you slam it into the tank, it goes kablooey. And at the range it's going kablooey, you're lucky if it doesn't take your head off, much less actually kill you. The Orks have become suicide bombers.
Although, in fairness, if the warhead operates on the principle of a crack missile, it actually causes an implosion to actually penetrate the armor rather than an explosion.
Sadly, however, the Orks don't operate on an implosive effect. Their rocket launcher is definitely explosive.
Yes,